Hello, and welcome to another Doujinshi reading from White Album 2. Today we are checking out a light novel style doujin. This is the Voiceless Idol's Perch. It is, as you could probably assume, a Setsuna-centric doujinshi. So this is yet another doujin by Ushineko. Ushineko is a really popular doujin artist in terms of the written doujins, like the fanfic style ones. They are really good, and this one specifically is focused on Setsuna's 3 years during university, post-introductory chapter, when everything was really awkward between her and Haruki. So let's go ahead and take a look. The Voiceless Idol's Perch, White Album 2 short story, Setsuna's 3-year blank. The text is written by Ushineko, and the illustration is by Ena. Editing and publishing by Rudo no Gakushidan. So Ushineko and Ena are kind of a dynamic duo. If you haven't seen my other videos, they're pretty much always working together on the White Album 2 content, which I think is really cool. The woman's eyes were dark. Behind the lenses of her thick-framed glasses, beneath the shadow of her long, full lashes, lurking in the depths of her eyes, was nothingness. She sat perfectly straight at the counter, occasionally sipping elegantly from her glass of wine. Even at the moments when her slender, delicate throat moved as she swallowed, her eyes, slightly elevated, showed nothing but void. This is so sad too, because with Setsuna, in the very beginning when you see her eyes and they've got like no pupils and no shines and they're just kind of dead, and it's so sad and kind of creepy. It's exactly what they're describing here. However, once she had passed 3 glasses, a fire could be glimpsed now and then, flickering faintly in the depths of that void. At those moments, she bit her lower lip lightly, slightly distorting it. That fire had nothing to do with enthusiasm for life. It emitted no passion to drive her forward. It was a fire that seeped in slowly, torturing her wings. It was regret and jealousy. It nested in her heart, scorching it. It smothered, scattering pitch-black soot through the nothingness. AKA heartbreak, unfortunately. This part is hard because they've described it in the story a lot in White Album 2. They're like, oh yeah, it was really painful, it was a really hard time. But then that's all it is. It's just kind of glazed over. So to read something like this and really get in depth into what Setsuna was feeling during that time is pretty depressing. The Voiceless Idol's Perch Part 2. That song, a year later. Deep autumn, afterward. She first visited the cafe in November of 2008. I remember seeing her stiffen slightly after timidly opening and closing the door. Most likely, she had been startled by the noise level and the clientele. A cheap down jacket, its lightness, its only merit. Worn-out pink sneakers, washed-out jeans, a dull, dark gray, high-necked sweater. Her abundant brown hair hung down her back in 2 careless braids. I love braids, Setsuna. I wish she wore her braids every single day. Her bangs were disheveled, hiding her eyes. And upon her nose, those round, thick-framed glasses. No red on her lips, no blush on her cheeks. A paleness in her face. Poor Setsuna. I know they're trying to make her sound like really depressed and ugly, but like, she's so pretty when she wears these things. She looked like one of the middle-aged women from her job at the supermarket so long ago, stopping by a cafe on the way home from work. Just throw an apron on her and it would be perfect. She made up her mind, proceeded through the hushed cafe, and sat down on a bar stool at the end of a counter. It was a seat just beside the record player booth, from which one could see the record shelves. From the floor, only her back would be visible. "This, please?" says it's a cafe, but you serve alcohol, right? Zoinks. We don't have that many kinds, but yes. Would you like something to drink? Do you have champagne? Sorry. We don't sell sparkling wine by the glass. Sorry, I don't need champagne. Red wine, please. Something heavy. Coming right up. Something heavy. Who goes to a cafe and asks for something heavy? Also, cafes in Japan that serve alcohol are very expensive. You're going to be paying almost double what you would in a bar because it's just not a place you expect people to drink. After that, she spoke not a word, just drank in silence, erasing all traces of feeling. Apart from when an order was being placed, I never spoke with customers. In general, I never even went to take additional orders. So I left this solitary customer alone. I only got a good look at her face by chance. Normally, I stood at the register by the entry to the inner side of the counter as I served customers. However, when I went to change a record, I had to move to the booth. As I was in the booth searching for the next record, I happened to get a glance at her face from below. Her face painted with regret. Her eyes haunted by emptiness. I feel bad for everybody knows I feel bad for Setsuna, right? Like, obviously it sucks what happened, and obviously she's heartbroken. But I guess looking at it from adult perspective, it was a short relationship. It shouldn't ruin your life to the point where you're going to cafes and asking for something heavy and being haunted by emptiness. Like, come on, high school crush. But I guess to Setsuna, it really, really was a big deal. And Setsuna, unfortunately, has slightly alcoholic tendencies. And this Doujin is really kind of pushing in on that. After that, she returned to the cafe now and again. About once a month. She wasn't exactly a regular. When she did show up, it was always on a Saturday evening. And she always ordered a glass of red wine. Cabernet Sauvignon, a tart, heavy red. Slowly, slowly she drank. She drank beautifully, with no wavering of composure. Or perhaps it was more like she was holding her breath, suppressing her very existence as she drank. She showed no sign that she was enjoying her drink. It was as though she were ingesting a poison, a tiny bit at a time. I really love the way this author writes it. He's not straight out saying she was depressed. He's painting us an entire picture. He really, really does a great job with this. At first, I thought she might be overextending herself deliberately, ordering something heavy. I was technically part of the restaurant industry, if only a small one. Seeing someone imbibing half-heartedly did not give me an especially good feeling. So the 5th time she appeared, I said something. Cabernet is high in tannins. It's probably a bit difficult to drink. We also offer Merlot, Pinot Noir, and Sangiovese, if you'd like to try any of those. I'm fine, she declared, quietly but decisively. Excuse me. The excuse me, I get what they were trying to translate from, but in Japanese it's more like, oh, sorry, I said something slightly rude. That's kind of more what it's leaning towards there in the original Japanese for this. This brusqueness made me think I had said something presumptuous, but as I withdrew to pick a record, I heard her apologize. I'm really sorry. You went to the trouble of telling me those other options, and I just... Her voice was frail, shaking slightly. Her lashes cast shadows across the whites of her eyes. I caught a glimpse of some confusion. There was chaos swirling in her heart, which she was trying desperately to keep in check. That was how it appeared to me. And yet, because I had suddenly spoken to her, The emotions had overflowed, slashing through like blades. Not through me, but through her, herself. Oh, poor girl. I could see small waves of emotions struggling to drag her back to the other side of her nerve while she attempted to maintain her blank expression. At that moment, for the first time, her face looked like that of a child. For the first time, I thought, this girl with such emptiness in her eyes might still be a minor. Oh no. It's very, very rare to get carded in Japan. Like, even if you're 18, because the drinking age in Japan is 20, even if you're 18, I've never met any 18-year-olds that have been carded for buying alcohol. Not to give you any ideas, I'm just saying it's very, very rare for a staff member to be like, oh, are you underage? Kind of thing. In which case, I had to stop providing her with alcohol. But just as that flashed through my mind, she looked at me, smiled, and said, if something is easy to drink, I end up drinking too much. That was the first time I saw her smile. But it was a husk of a smile, a formality. It would be fair to call it a simple bending of the lips, undertaken for the simple purpose of speaking. A woman who could smile like that, who could varnish over things so easily, couldn't possibly be a minor. Having revised my thoughts, I dropped my pursuit. Aww. Setsuna is wise beyond her years, heartbroken beyond her years. Can we make requests for records? She asked me one night as she was ordering her third glass. Though she was nearly always empty-handed, today she held a movie pamphlet, something directed by Woody Allen, Vicky Cristina Barcelona, a love triangle with Scarlett Johansson and Penelope Cruz, if I remembered correctly. You can. One request per person. Would you like to see the lists? One per person. How stingy, considering most people probably don't make requests at all. I handed her a special edition of Swing Journal and a vocal anthology magazine. The ones that are circled or underlined are the ones we have. If you don't see what you're looking for, just ask. She took them silently and began flipping through. Setsuna plus music equals tragedy, 100%. This is definitely not going to end well. In her accustomed cold expression, there was an air of some emotional elevation. Maybe she'd enjoyed the movie. I'm sorry, I'm not actually sure. What kind of thing do you like? I really don't know. Well, you know this place is a jazz cafe, right? And you come here now and then. Yes, my dad used to listen sometimes. What did your dad listen to? Shack Attack, Weather Report. Those aren't jazz. They're more like fusion. It's a crossover with rock that was derived from jazz. Oh, really? I did think it sounded a bit different from the jazz I hear here. Here. She said this with such a straight face that I wasn't really sure how to respond. Setsuna's not necessarily the music literate person. She is just the karaoke queen. What else? He would listen to this CD sometimes that had a blue jacket with a lady singing into a microphone with her mouth open wide. Oh, that? I moved to the record booth to look for it. This one? Yes, that one. I'm impressed you knew what I meant. It's a pretty famous record. Want to hear it in analog? This record's just about over. Yes. Side A. Records. White Album 2 has put out 2 records. And they're very expensive, but very sought after. I removed the record from its jacket, checking the dark blue label stuck to its center. The gold-printed letters were tiny, and my far-sightedness always made it difficult to tell side A from side B. But with this particular record, it was easy to tell simply from the song titles. It was a fairly famous one. I set it on the mono player. I flipped the switch, and the turntable began to spin at 33.3 RPM. That's so specific. Once I was sure it had stabilized, I dropped the needle onto its outer lead. There was a small pop and some surface noise. Then a lonesome guitar rang out, joined by a piano that fell in drops, and "Don't Explain" began. Huh? The track order is different from my dad's CD. Oh, the CD must have a different track order from the original. This is the real order. Helen Merrill with Clifford Brown. The real order. That's a little bit pretentious. But for a cafe that plays actual records, I guess they might be a little bit pretentious when it comes to jazz. An iconic record among iconic records. A collaboration between Helen Merrill, a white singer, and Brownie, a genius trumpet player who died at an early age. It was a popular one, and many had requested it. Don't make excuses, basically. It was written by a black singer, Billie Holiday. It said her husband at the time came home with lipstick on his shirt and rattled off a bunch of excuses, and that was what she took as her inspiration. Cheating, huh? She muttered, expressionless. Oh no, what an awful song, no. Poor Setsuna, she can't get away. I personally didn't tend to listen to music with vocals, and especially not by white singers. It just didn't give me the blues feeling. So I had never put this record on to listen to the songs. When I did put it on, it was because I wanted to hear Brownie's trumpet. The stunning solo interlude ended, and Helen Merrill's voice returned. "You know that I love you," she murmured suddenly. "As long as I love, I can endure. You're the only one I think of. Everything I have is yours. I've cried hearing rumors. I know you've done wrong. But it's not a matter of wrong or right, as long as I'm with you. So don't make any excuses." Something like that. Tears were running down her face. Oh, poor Setsuna, but also this is so awkward. Like, having worked in a restaurant, if a customer suddenly cries, oh my god, it's so sad. It's like, what do you do? Obviously, you try to comfort them, but there's only so much you can do as a stranger. At least if it were a bartender is like, not trained, but used to hearing people's troubles and problems. This poor cafe person. Whoever wrote these lyrics must have been a foolish woman. Yeah, I guess so. Billie Holiday was a foolish woman. She had all sorts of troubles, drowned herself in love, alcohol, drugs, and died a mess. The needle began to trace the second track. "You'd be so nice to come home to." Oh man. She dabbed at her eyes with a handkerchief as she spoke. "My dad only ever listened to this song, so I didn't know there was a song like that on here." Her bashful expression looked slightly childish. Was this her real face? It's used in commercials a lot. Its Japanese title is "I Wish You Would Come Home." That's a mistranslation. It is? It means something like, "I want to come home to you, darling." The positions are switched. Are you an English literature student? Her face suddenly straightened. It's fine. This is just normal conversation. Shoot, what was I doing? It was my policy not to pry into customers' lives. Sorry, forget I asked. I just have a bit of a specialty in English, that's all. After listening to the remaining 2 songs, she rose. Sir, the next time I come here, she said as she was paying her tab, will you play something for me again? What kind of thing do you want to hear? Something old and sad. I don't want to hear any new songs. An ironic smile appeared at the corners of her lips. No new songs. I mean, I know that, hearing Chidokanai Koi or something would rip her heart apart at this point in the storyline. But I doubt a jazz cafe like this is going to play that anyway, so I don't think she really needs to worry that much. A torch song, then. Torch song? Something like a song about love that burns in your heart. It's what they call old songs about disappointed love. To carry a torch for someone. Unrequited love, huh? Her eyes darted back and forth. I'll get some ready. You can listen to a bit of everything. Yeah. She met my eyes. Her gaze was as hollow as always. But there was something faint in her brow, as though she had decided something. I love this. It's like this slow burn. It's not really high action, but it tells such a deep story. Ushineko is so talented with things like that. Which brings us to the Voiceless Idol's Perch, Part 3. That snow, 2 years earlier. Early autumn, before. That said, it wasn't as though she started showing up any more frequently. Her clothes were always the same, the epitome of plain. Even when it got warmer, the only change she made was a cheap, unfitted blouse. Oh, how different than Setsuna used to be. I had decided that whenever she came in, even if she didn't request anything, I would put on a famous jazz record with a female singer, whether black or white. Anne Burton's Blue Burton, Ella Fitzgerald, Songs in a Mellow Mood, Shirley Horn's Embers and Ashes, Julie London's Julie Is Her Name, Carmen McRae's By Special Request, Dina Shore's Bouquet of Blues, Sarah Vaughan's with Clifford Brown, Dina Washington's What a Difference a Day Makes. The other thing that I really like about Ushineko is he does so much research for his books, his fan fiction, his books, his light novels. They're very well written and there's so much information. It's like a specialist. I mean, okay, it's not that technical, but it's more technical than I would expect from a doujinshi. And that really shows he puts the work in. When one of my regulars pointed out how unusual it was for me to be playing vocal records, I thought I might rein it in a little. I wasn't trying to show this woman any special favor, exactly. But seeing the little waves of emotion that appeared faintly in her cheeks while she was listening to a good record wasn't bad. It seemed like she was holding her wine glass just a little higher. Man, Setsuna should just get with this bartender instead. Not bartender, he's a cafe person, but still. Is there an event today? With the passing of summer, things had turned chilly again. That evening, she had replaced her unflattering blouse with the baggy cotton parka she'd been wearing at the beginning of spring. Unusually for her, she had shown up on a Friday. We have live performances 2 Fridays a month. I see. If we didn't have an event now and then to draw new customers, this quiet little place would go out of business. I guess so. Female singers tend to bring people in. Makes sense. So, you going to skip out for today? I think I'll listen. There's a charge. 3,000 yen. That's a fair amount. 3,000 yen. That's like $25-ish. And this is very common for jazz cafes in Japan. They are pretty expensive. I mean, $25 cover charge, plus you buy drinks, plus you buy food. I mean, granted, you should pay for your entertainment, and this does help to pay the entertainers, but it can be a barrier to enjoying live jazz, for sure, for sure. Well, everyone manages to eat, at least. I see. Granted, there aren't all that many people who actually want to make a living out of performing. I see. You aren't interested at all, are you? No, well, I guess. So, since I'm here, I will. You know, our rule is that students pay half price. Oh, really? So are you a student? Ah, can I see your student ID? Maybe that was another mistake. Awkward. Oh, man. Why is Setsuna so awkward about things? I had taken a light tone, since lately we'd been having more complete conversations, but maybe I'd gone too far. All right, we'll just say you're a student. No, wait a moment, please. She pulled a camel yellow ticket holder out of her purse. It had a cute design that didn't seem to fit her. Well, doesn't seem to fit who she's become, but the true Setsuna, no, it still fits. Is it okay if I hide my personal info? She covered the bottom 3/4 of her student ID, showing me only the name of the university. Wait, that university? She was a student at a fancy top-of-the-line place like that? Will that do? Yes. Great. Here, 1,500 yen. Thank you. And she sat at her usual bar stool. People like that always freak me out. People who are like so sensitive about their personal information. I'm like, are you just a weirdly hyper paranoid person, or do you have something to hide? You know? Even if you show your student ID, it's just going to show your name and maybe your date of entry into the university. So, what do you want to do if you become a professional? Do you play Tchaikovsky and Chopin at international piano competitions? Or things like that? That's for classical musicians. With jazz, you don't really see, that should be SEE, see any international competitions. So, how do you become a pro? If you're a high achiever at a place like the Berklee College of Music, you get opportunities to play sessions with famous musicians or record with major labels when you graduate. Other kids who studied at music schools in Japan, might make demos so they can perform at live music venues, become a pupil to a professional, play sessions with pros they know, enter small competitions in Japan. It's a sort of slow and steady road they follow that way. I see. Now that you mention it, the pianist accompanying today's singer is classically trained. Wow. Huh? Clunk. She just got back. There she is. The woman turned from the counter, following my eyes to the door. The pianist stood, the door shut behind her. Long black hair, almond-shaped eyes. Her model-like physique, too, was part of her appeal. Kazusa? Kazusa. Oh boy, Setsuna, let's just recall some trauma that you are definitely not ready to face at this moment. As the woman looked at the pianist, I could see that her back had stiffened. Her gaze was fixated on the pianist as she approached the counter. Barkeep, have you heard from her? The pianist took off her mask. As she muttered her question, her full lips gave her a somewhat young impression. The woman looked away from the pianist, exhaled quietly, and faced the counter once more. She sat her elbows on the countertop, propping her face up in her hands. What was that? She looked as though she'd seen a ghost. Maybe she had mistaken the pianist for someone she was afraid of meeting. Yeah, that's an understatement. But it wouldn't make, we know, right? We know as the reader, it wouldn't make sense for that to be Kazusa because she didn't come back in between except for that one night after Haruki had published that article. So, with that, I think we will stop off there for now, and I will come back with the next part later. So, thanks so much for joining me on this Doujinshi reading from White Album 2, and I'll catch you soon with the next chapter. Until then, hope you take care. See you!